Happy 20th anniversary to Encore. To me, straight off the bat, this is my second least favourite Eminem album, and I want to dedicate a video to it because I want to talk about it today. If you love Eminem or you enjoy vinyl collecting, particularly within the hip-hop genre, you're in the right place. I'm Ollie Rodriguez-Dom and I collect hip-hop vinyl records and showcase them to your faces. If that sounds cool, press the subscribe button. Now today marks the 20th anniversary of Encore being released on November 12th, 2004. And this is going to be a bit of a newer series on my channel where I basically, on an anniversary of an album, if I have the record for it, I want to show you it, go through it, and just discuss the album more than anything, because I love music obviously because I collect vinyl records, meaning I actually do enjoy talking about the music as well. And I think Encore is a perfect one to start off with because to me, when I think of Encore, it feels like lost potential, and it's a bit of a what if to me because of like there's so much that went on behind the scenes with this album that just meant it just was not what it should have been at all. Now let's have a look through the vinyl record itself, because despite all of that, this is actually probably my favourite regular, meaning like not a limited edition vinyl or anything that I own, but this is my favourite regular album that I have on vinyl record because I think the cover itself is quite iconic, and the blue itself is just beautiful, and obviously it's almost like if you were to put this side by side, well, I talk about it when you can just do it, if you were to put it side by side with the Eminem show, that blue curtain almost just perfectly goes over it, and it's like the perfect cover you could ask for a sequel to have, and it didn't live up to it, did it? And coming off of that album as well, like probably what people regard as like one of the best albums in hip hop ever, or just music ever. Following up from that was going to be hard, but I didn't think it would end up like this. So the cover itself, amazing. We've seen enough of that now. On the back, we do have the track list, obviously, and it's kind of like you're outside the arena about to go see him, and that's like the sign that you've got for the album, which I think is a really nice concept on the back as well. But as we open it up, we have probably my absolute favorite gatefold in my entire collection. Like there is so much going on here and it all tells a story, and it perfectly encapsulates what Encore was trying to do and the story it was trying to tell with the whole Eminem going out on his last show, taking everyone with him. I'll put some close-up shots on here, but literally on the entire left side, you basically like are shown pictures of the story going on with him in his dressing room, contemplating what he's about to do, leaving his final note, leaving his dressing room, introducing himself on stage. You've got the behind shot, which I actually believe that was supposed to be the original cover, which is obviously this one which is featured on the right here. That was supposed to be, from what I understand, the original cover of this album, but they then went from the front shot, which I think just adds to it even more because you basically get the front, but then you can then see behind him what he's actually got, and it's that whole thing of like realizing there's more going on here in terms of having the gun, and then he pulls it out, starts shooting at the crowd, see some people dying in there. I really love this shot of him like holding the gun with the curtains behind him as well. People running and screaming everywhere, him running to the back basically, and then offing himself essentially in the, I think that's the best YouTube terminology I can put it. But then below that you have like this beautiful font which is like a eulogy essentially, or like what you would find on like the, I can't remember what you call it, but the like flyer you would get at a funeral for someone. Like you get all this and it actually looks really beautiful. It's just a shame I don't think the music matches up what those songs were, and I do find Encore quite interesting in the sense of like it's an interesting concept to almost do this thing of like you've just done one of the best albums ever, but then your follow-up is like a bit of a, I don't think it was intentionally trying to be shit, but I think there was a story that it was trying to tell about not really like taking itself as seriously as like say the Eminem show took itself. Man, when I look at some of this photography, it's really amazing, and obviously like they brought some of the photography that wasn't used in this back for the Death of Slim Shady with the back cover of him in the coffin, and also some extra shots in there too. Like this might honestly be some of my favorite Eminem promotional photography for any of his projects. This was like Eminem at his peak, and with some of his peak looks, some of his most iconic looks, and like everything around this album to me, like I wasn't around in 2004, well I was, but I was basically just getting out of my nappies essentially. I would have been free at that point. But from everything I understand, like this should have been just like the peak way to like close off an incredible 3-album run with a 4th, but it just didn't happen, and I think that's a good place to speak about why it didn't work as an album. And obviously, in Eminem's own words, Encore, I was on drugs, relapsed, I was flushing them out. When you go through this, you can tell he's on drugs. You listen to his vocals, like something that happens with drug addicts, right, is like the more addicted they get and like the longer they go doing the drugs, their voice slash like the way they speak starts to like slur words, everything like that. And one of the things I noticed when I was literally listening to this album yesterday was that a lot of like his rapping, like all of his words essentially like drag on the floor. Like at first you're not going to pick up on it instantly, but the more you listen to it and the more you just like focus on it, the more you hear like how addicted he really is during this album. And straight up, that's why this album failed, because you had a guy completely hooked on drugs trying to make an album at his peak with under all this pressure, probably feeling like he had said a lot of stuff he had already wanted to say, and probably at this point could have just used a break. But then on top of that, before this album gets even a chance to release, leaks come out about it, and I think there was a complete wrong reaction. Like, if you go through Eminem and like seeing stuff that's happened to him, he hates leaks, which I completely understand is like completely fair if I was an artist, which, hey, I kind of am. I make music, do you not know? Like, stuff that isn't meant to come out that was made ages ago, or stuff for a new project, like, completely heartbreaking as an artist if that stuff were to happen and were to get out before it was meant to. However, I think Eminem's reaction really did not help with this album, because instead of actually including them where they are not even on this vinyl, they're on the deluxe version, which I think is only on CD and obviously on streaming, but there's nothing on a vinyl at all for them. And that's with We As Americans, I think Love You More, and then Ricky Tikki Tok. Ricky Tikki Tok I am going to keep out of this conversation because those first two tracks really belonged on this album. The Ricky Tikki Tok one, not anything crazy in my opinion, but We As Americans was supposed to be the intro track, and honestly it would fit so well on this track list as the first song. It kind of like fit that kind of like, you have White America and then you have We As Americans, like really good way to go into it. And I think when you listen to those deluxe songs, you can almost like hear more of the Eminem show Eminem like on the track, if that makes sense. Like his vocals sound a bit more like it, and in terms of his rapping on those two songs, he sounds a bit more coherent than the stuff that ends up being made last, which he then puts on here, which he admits himself he took like 20 minutes to make with stuff like Puke, Big Meanie, Rain Man, sorry, Big Weenie I meant. I won't go through the songs track by track, but my overall opinion on this, I've spoken to my friend Versatile Variety about this, friend of the channel, go check him out on Instagram. But we've spoken a lot about this album, and every track you go through, there is something good about it. And I'm not even just talking about the rapping, right? With Eminem, I think one of the things I've accepted with him is he can never rap badly. He's too good to ever rap bad. Occasionally he has a bad flow. Regardless of what you think of Eminem, his rapping is always on par. And that's not necessarily some of my problems with this album. And I think lyrically on this album, he's still there and he's still showing how good he can be on the mic. But kind of, again, bringing back that whole vocal element of it, I think there's more of an accent problem in this album than Relapse. Like, people were probably going to disagree a lot with me with that, but like, with Relapse, you can kind of accept it. You know what, I'm going to have to save it for a Relapse video because I've got a lot I can say about that project, and I'm going to keep that statement there. I think there are worse accents in this than there are in Relapse. I'll just keep that one there. Half of it is to do with the fact he's on drugs. I think it makes him sound a bit whiny in some of the stuff he says, but also he can't help that because of the drugs he's on. So there's that side of the music, but there's a lot of good, including the beats. And it just feels like every time I go through this album and I listen to every song, I just find there's something I love about each one, even with the Rain Man, even with the Big Weenie. Like, there's a lot of good on it, and you can kind of like throughout this, you see like Eminem like still doing what he does well, but he's just like, everything he does well, he does two things bad. And clearly the leaks just played a massive part on how he decided to treat this album, with just being like, fuck it. Like, it felt like a lot of effort went into marketing this album, with like all the photography done for it, with obviously his previous success and everything. Like, there was a lot riding on this album, and to have those leaks come out, which honestly I don't think would have affected it all that much. Like, he then decides to do Puke, he decides to do My First Single, even Ass Like That. Like, I think that one's probably one of the more successful songs on this album, but I don't like it. I think the negative of this album kind of speaks for itself in some ways. I think for me, what I would like to focus on is the good stuff on it, because there is good on it. You literally have Mockingbird on here and Like Toy Soldiers, like two, like I think easily top 10 Eminem songs. If you were to ask anyone, those two songs would probably appear nearer the top of that list. And that's on an album which is, in a lot of people's opinion, forgotten or just a bad album. And I feel like that was what this project was supposed to be. When you look at We As Americans, when you get Love You More, when you get Mockingbird, it feels like this was supposed to be more of a retrospective Eminem. Like, at the end of his time, looking back on everything he had done and kind of like thinking about it a bit more, that's what I feel like this album was supposed to be. Because I would throw it in here as this era, but When I'm Gone comes out a year later on the Curtain Call album, and to me that's an Encore era song that could easily have fit this album. And could you picture an album like this featuring songs which already does Mockingbird and Like Toy Soldiers, then you add on top of it When I'm Gone, and then you add We As Americans? That's already 4 really strong songs which are on this album. And I think for that reason, because Mockingbird and Like Toy Soldiers are on here, if they weren't here on this album, I think then it would be more forgotten. But because people look back on it as those 2 songs really helped elevate this album, it helps it not be a complete dud. Those are 2 like really shining points in terms of this album. But I think a song that is often forgotten is Never Enough. Now I think Never Enough, you have to give credit to Nate Dogg, because Nate Dogg doesn't have a bad hook in him, and this was during 50 Cent's peak, so I think those 2 may have carried the song a little bit, because honestly I don't really remember Eminem's verse too much on this song. And I honestly would genuinely recommend you go back and listen to at least Never Enough if you're going to go and listen to this album or any of the songs on it, because Never Enough does not ever get enough credit that I think it deserves. It's a really good song, and one that you'll be surprised with how good it is if you haven't listened to it in a while. Another one I like is One Shot, Two Shot. That's kind of like, you notice if you go back from, I don't think there was anything on the Slim Shady LP, but from Marshall Mathers LP to Encore, there's like the 1D12 song on every album, and I think the one on the Marshall Mathers LP is the worst out of them. On the Eminem show you get When the Music Starts, which is so good. I love that track. But then on this one you get One Shot, Two Shot, and it just tells the story of kind of what almost became a, what would you call it? A premonition? Because obviously everything that happened with Proof and how he died, unfortunately, but like moving that out of the picture, One Shot, Two Shot tells a really cool story in terms of the vivid imagery, and like everyone has like this really good weight in the song from D12 and Eminem. Obviously, like they all paint a really vivid picture that all weaves with each other's story that they're telling on this track, and I think One Shot, Two Shot is a really good listen. And then the final track, Encore, with Dre and 50 Cent, again 50 Cent in his peak era here, like of course it's going to be a really good track. So, and Even Spend Some Time is a really good song. Like there is good stuff on this project, but I think the good is really good, but the bad stuff on it like stands out too much to a point where it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Oh, shut the fuck up, these dogs, man. I'm actually gonna go over and fucking put them in my neighbor's mailbox. I think they heard that threat, actually. I meant to say their heads, not just them. But with those bad songs as well, like there is catchiness to them. Like Puke, like, you don't know how sick you make me, like that sort of thing, like is catchy. Like I remember it, like it's almost iconically bad, those songs. Like even Big Weenie, like dissing, I think it's Benzino, I think, on that track, but like it's almost kind of funny that like you're having a diss track but you're not even taking it seriously yourself, which is almost like more of an insult to the guy who's like trying to beef with you. Like it's quite funny. But I could talk about Encore for quite a while because I think there's a lot that can go into it. But I just wanted to spend some time and go through it, reminisce a little bit on the album, and I think there's a lot of conversations you can have about this album, but the thing I do want to leave it on is this Gatefold, because honestly, I don't think there's a better Eminem Gatefold in my collection. I absolutely love how this one looks. Go in the comments, let me know what you thought of Encore. Like anything about the songs, anything about the album, what are your thoughts on it? Because I think, for me, in summary, this album is just an album that I think could have been better than the Eminem show if it wasn't for the circumstances that Eminem was under himself. Don't know if this is gonna happen, but I'm kind of hoping for a 20th anniversary of Encore. Like, there's clearly enough content to do something. Who knows? Probably by the time this video goes out, we'll know if there is or isn't, but I think it'll be pretty cool if there is. Here's to hedging our bets, so we'll see. You probably know by now if it is, so fingers crossed. So go in the comments, let me know what you think, leave a like on the video, and I think the next anniversary I'm going to look at is going to be the 7th anniversary of Revival, which is in December. So let me know what you thought of this whole video. Is there anything I can do to improve it, anything else you'd like me to include, because when it comes to that video I'll be learning off this video and just seeing how it goes. So yeah, don't want to spend forever talking about an album because I honestly could when it comes to Eminem, but those are just some of my thoughts on Encore that I just wanted to share with you guys, and I would be more than happy to have a conversation with you guys below in the comments to delve more into this album. So anyway, I've been Ollie Rodriguez Dolman. I'll just see you in the next one. Take care.